Some of the most trusted brands in Britain are hiding ingredients and industrial processes most shoppers would never accept if they knew the truth. And the consequences range from chemical additives and ultra-processing to animal-derived compounds that never appear on the front of the box. I've dug into ingredient lists, industry investigations and public reports to reveal what's been kept quiet for far too long. Because today, we're counting down 10 major UK brands you may never buy again once you discover what they're actually made of. And one of them sits in nearly every British kitchen cupboard, carrying a reputation for comfort while hiding ingredients no one expects. The truth starts now. Number 10. Greggs sausage rolls. Across the UK, Greggs sausage rolls have become an everyday symbol of comfort. They're cheap, warm, filling, and wrapped in that familiar golden pastry you can spot a mile away. Students grab them between lectures, workers pick them up on lunch breaks, and families feed them to their children as a quick treat. They appear so simple, sausage on the inside, pastry on the outside. Most people assume the filling is just minced meat with seasoning, especially because the phrase sausage roll sounds homely and straightforward. When a brand is so widespread and iconic, it's easy to trust that what you're eating is exactly what it seems. But that's where things start to look different beneath the surface. The meat used in high-volume commercial rolls isn't always the traditional cuts many imagine. Instead, it can include mechanically recovered meat, the leftover trimmings collected after the best cuts are taken, along with fillers and binders to bulk out the product. The ingredient list can reveal emulsifiers, stabilizers, and flavor enhancers designed not for quality, but to stretch the filling, standardize the texture, and keep costs low. Even the pastry isn't the simple buttery dough people picture. Its fat content can be made from industrial blends engineered for long shelf life and heat resistance, rather than anything resembling homemade baking. And this isn't just trivia. When you choose food built on processed trimmings instead of whole ingredients, you're choosing a snack that quietly increases your intake of additives, industrial fats, and elevated sodium levels. For anyone trying to avoid ultra-processed foods, parents, teenagers, older adults, or health-conscious shoppers, comforting familiarity of that warm Greggs roll becomes a very different story. What looks like honest, traditional fare ends up being a product shaped more by efficiency targets and mass production science than by the simplicity the name suggests. Sometimes the cheaper something is, the more engineering goes into disguising how far it has drifted from the real thing. And if that already makes you rethink a classic high street snack, the next item will hit even harder because plenty of children eat it by the handful, without parents realizing what actually gives it that famous chewy texture. Number 9. Haribo sweets. Haribo sweets are woven into childhood memories across Britain. They show up in lunchboxes, birthday parties, cinemas, and car snack stashes. Their brightly coloured shapes look innocent enough, and the packaging leans heavily on fun and nostalgia. Most people assume they're made from fruit flavourings, sugar, and little else. To a parent buying them as a harmless treat, they seem no different from any other bag of chewy sweets, just a simple little indulgence that's been around for decades. But few shoppers ever stop to consider what actually creates that glossy, stretchy, bouncy texture that defines a Haribo. Much of that comes from gelatine, which is produced from animal tissue, typically bones, skins, and connective material. It's a processing ingredient used widely in sweets, but rarely acknowledged by those who think every gummy is just a flavoured jelly. Some varieties also rely on artificial colourings, flavour agents and glazing compounds added to stop the sweets clumping together and to preserve their shine for months on end. The colours we associate with berries or citrus fruits aren't usually from fruit at all, but from manufactured colour additives that help standardise appearance in huge production runs. This matters more than most people realise. Anyone following vegetarian, vegan, religious, or ethical dietary principles often discovers too late that what seemed like a harmless packet of gummies isn't compatible with their beliefs. Parents trying to avoid artificial colours for children with sensitivity issues can be surprised to find them present in certain ranges. And for those who assume that the fruity taste reflects real ingredients, it can be uncomfortable to learn that sweets designed for children are, in reality, built on industrial methods rather than natural simplicity. Once you understand how much engineering goes into the chew, the colour, the shine, and the very texture itself, the innocence starts to fade. And if that revelation shook your trust in a sweet that's practically part of British culture, just wait for the next item, because it's one of the UK's most famous cupboard staples, yet its long shelf life and just add hot water promise hide far more processing than most shoppers ever imagine. Number 8. Pot noodle. For decades, pot noodle has been the unofficial meal of rushed workers, sleepy students, and anyone craving something warm that takes almost no effort. Its branding leans into humor and convenience, suggesting it's just a quick pot of noodles, seasoning, and water. The logic feels simple enough. If you can prepare it in 2 minutes with a kettle, it must be straightforward food. Its low price, familiar flavors, and long-standing place in British cupboards have helped many believe it's just a casual shortcut, not something that needs scrutiny. But the ease is precisely what encourages most people not to look any further. That iconic, long shelf life doesn't come from simple, dried noodles alone. Behind the powdered flavor sachets and dehydrated mix can be preservatives, stabilizers, and artificial flavor enhancers that allow the product to sit for months without spoiling. The savory meat notes often come from engineered compounds designed to imitate depth rather than anything from an actual kitchen. Even the noodles themselves aren't just flour and water. Manufacturing processes, oil treatments, and structuring agents are used to preserve texture long after fresh noodles would have gone stale. It's a highly tuned industrial formula designed to feel like a real meal, while being as far removed from wholesome cooking as an item on a warehouse shelf. And this matters because pot noodle taps into moments when people are tired, hungry, or trying to stretch their budget. They think they're getting a quick bowl of noodles, but they're actually consuming layers of ultra-processing, flavor chemistry, structural additives, and sodium levels that can surprise anyone who checks the back of the pot. For parents or adults trying to cut down on artificial ingredients, it's unsettling to realize that the comfort of a warm cup comes from mechanisms built for cheapness and longevity rather than nourishment. What looks like a cozy, harmless snack becomes a reminder of how convenience often masks complexity, especially in products that seem too familiar to question. And if the idea of ordinary noodles being engineered into something long life has you uneasy, the next item will hit even closer to home, because it's a biscuit almost every household has bought, yet few ever think about what keeps it so perfectly uniform. Number 7. McVitie's digestive biscuits. McVitie's digestives are one of those products people barely question. They sit in nearly every British home, offered with a cuppa to guests, tucked into school bags, and served alongside cheese boards at family gatherings. Their branding leans heavily on tradition, wholesomeness, and that familiar crumbly texture. Most shoppers believe they're made from simple ingredients: flour, a bit of sugar, maybe some whole grains, and that's it. The word digestive itself suggests something gentle, almost beneficial. The biscuits feel comforting and safe, almost moral compared to the sweets and crisps that sit beside them on the shelf. But beneath that nostalgic image, modern mass-produced digestives aren't as old-fashioned as they appear. Many commercial batches rely on industrial-scale palm oil, chosen for its low cost, long shelf life, and stable melting point, not for health or ethics. And palm oil isn't just controversial for environmental reasons. It's one of several highly processed fats that can end up in everyday biscuits without most consumers realizing it. Alongside that are emulsifiers, agents designed to stabilize the dough and keep the texture uniform across thousands of batches. There's also the reality that much of the grain has been so heavily refined by the time it reaches biscuit form that any natural goodness associated with wholemeal ingredients has long been stripped away. The rustic reputation, in other words, is often more marketing than reality. The impact isn't simply philosophical. For people who grew up believing digestives are a lighter, more honest biscuit, it can be jarring to discover how far they sit from traditional home-baked biscuits. Refined ingredients, processed fats, and additives quietly shift the product away from what shoppers imagine they're feeding their children or themselves. Those keeping an eye on cardiovascular health, food sustainability, or ultra-processing concerns might look at that familiar packet very differently once they know what creates the texture, the crunch, and the stability. What feels like a humble, trustworthy biscuit is in fact the product of finely tuned manufacturing priorities that most people never stop to consider. And if that makes you reconsider something as everyday as a biscuit, then the next item will challenge another British favourite, because it's sold as a family tea time staple. Yet the amount of actual meat inside may shock anyone who assumes they're getting the real thing. Number 6. Richmond sausages. Richmond sausages are one of those items that feel like a family default. They're stacked in supermarket fridges, used in easy weeknight dinners, snuck into fry-ups, and served at children's tea time. The packaging presents them as traditional pork sausages, a comforting, homely staple. Many parents pick them believing they're getting a straightforward meat option that's softer and milder than the butcher's version. And because they're so common, most people assume the contents are simple: minced pork, seasoning, maybe some herbs. Nothing more complicated than that. Yet when you take a closer look, Richmond sausages tell a much more processed story. The actual percentage of pork in some varieties is surprisingly low, with the rest made up of water, bulking agents and binders that stretch small amounts of meat further than most shoppers would ever expect. It isn't always the kind of whole muscle cuts that people imagine when they think of sausages, but rather blends that can include mechanically processed trimmings and meat derivatives formed to replicate texture. Add to that stabilizers, preservatives, and flavoring compounds designed to mask the way the product is constructed, and the classic sausage image becomes harder to maintain. Even the soft texture, often seen as gentle and child-friendly, can be the result of formulation rather than quality pork. It matters because sausages are something many families treat as a proper meal, especially for children. If you're trying to reduce ultra-processed foods or avoid the more industrial side of the modern food system, finding out how little traditional meat is present can be unsettling. Nutritional expectations shift when you realize the higher sodium, the engineered moisture retention, and the layers of filler material replace what most people assume they're buying. Parents in particular may rethink sausages as a regular tea time plate filler once they learn how much effort goes into making a tiny amount of pork look, feel, and taste like the real thing. Before I reveal the next item, if you're learning something new here, or you simply want more hidden truth breakdowns like this, make sure you hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and means you won't miss the rest of this countdown. And if that makes you raise an eyebrow at a product sold as a classic family favorite, the next item takes the surprise even further, because it's marketed as a boost of energy and strength. Yet, its modern formula is far removed from the wholesome image it once had. Number 5. Lucozade Energy. Lucozade has long been woven into Britain's cultural memory. For older generations, it was the drink you gave someone recovering from illness, the bright bottle placed on a bedside table, a symbol of rest and strength. Today, its orange foil branding fills gym bags, supermarket aisles, and corner shop fridges, especially among students and busy workers looking for a pick-me-up. That legacy of restoring energy still lingers, encouraging people to see it as a smarter choice than fizzy drinks or sugary bottles with no purpose. It carries the subtle status of being medicinal, supportive, almost nutritional. But modern Lucozade is not the formula many people think they're buying. While once associated with glucose support, the contemporary versions contain artificial sweeteners, high sweetness levels, colorings, and ingredients geared more towards creating a stimulating hit than anything resembling its original role. The formula has evolved into an engineered energy beverage rather than a recovery tonic, relying on caffeine blends, acidity regulators, and lab-designed flavoring systems that produce its trademark taste. That bright orange look isn't the result of anything natural. It's color chemistry used to keep the product consistent across millions of bottles. For a drink with such wholesome emotional roots, the ingredient list tells a story very different to the heritage image it projects. And that switch matters, especially for parents handing bottles to teenagers as a better option than cola, or adults reaching for it during long work shifts. The misconception means many people believe they're making a sensible choice, when in reality, they're consuming a modern engineered energy soda with many of the same concerns found in typical high sweetness, artificially boosted drinks. The caffeine and additives may be fine in moderation, but the gap between reputation and reality is wide, and it shows how marketing history can soften the truth about what a product has become. If that shift from comforting bedside drink to full-scale engineered energy formula caught you off guard, stay with me. Because the next brand looks like a low-calorie, health-conscious alternative, yet its glossy, light image masks a surprising amount of lab-designed construction. Number 4. Mueller Light Yogurt. Mueller Light Yogurts carry an image that feels reassuringly healthy. They're stocked in diet baskets, recommended by slimming groups, and bought by people who think they're choosing a lighter, more responsible dessert. The packaging leans into pastel colors, low calorie numbers, and flavor combinations that imitate everything from cheesecake to strawberry shortcake. Because they're low in fat and marketed as a light swap for richer dairy products, many shoppers assume they're close to natural yogurt, just sweetened and flavored, but fundamentally wholesome. Yet what gives Mueller Light its silky texture, creamy mouthfeel, and dessert-like flavors isn't simply cultured milk. A closer inspection of the ingredient list shows a product shaped heavily by formulation science rather than simplicity. To create thickness without cream, manufacturers use stabilizers, thickeners, and modified starches. To achieve sweetness without calories, artificial sweeteners step in, often paired with flavor compounds designed to mimic the taste of desserts more convincingly than fruit ever could. Even the ultra-smooth consistency comes not from slow fermentation, but from refining processes that push yogurt closer to an engineered gel than a traditionally cultured dairy product. It's this careful balancing act that allows something low in fat and low in calories to still taste indulgent. Not by being natural, but by being intricately constructed. And the result matters when people buy these yogurts, believing they're avoiding processed foods. A product presented as lean and health-forward can, in reality, be packed with compounds that serve visual appeal, mouthfeel, and sweetness rather than nutritional depth. For those trying to reduce artificial additives or eat less engineered foods, that glossy tub can deliver the opposite of what they intended. And anyone assuming light equals closer to nature may be surprised to learn how much chemistry is hiding behind the dessert-style flavors that make Mueller Light so popular. If discovering the reality behind a yogurt marketed as healthy made you pause, keep watching, because the next brand is even more deceptive. It's a household name in bakery aisles, and yet the reason its bread stays soft for so long is far more industrial than most people could ever guess. Number 3. Warburton's bread. Warburton's bread feels like the definition of simplicity. The orange and white packaging, the familiar logo, and the idea of a soft loaf sliced for sandwiches appear almost quintessentially British. For decades, households have bought it without a second thought, believing it to be a straightforward mix of flour, water, yeast, and salt. Some even see it as more trustworthy than discount brand loaves, associating it with family heritage, tradition, and reliability. When bread is such a basic food, the assumption is always that it must be made the basic way, kneaded, baked, sliced, and nothing more. But industrial bread making on the scale seen in modern supermarket loaves is anything but traditional. Warburton's, like many mass producers, uses dough improvers and conditioners, compounds specifically designed to speed fermentation, extend softness, and ensure uniform texture across thousands of batches. These agents help the bread stay pillowy for days longer than a home-baked loaf ever could. Add in emulsifiers and processing aids that strengthen the dough and standardize the crumb, and the picture starts to shift from homely baking to highly efficient manufacturing. The flour used is often refined to the point where natural fiber and nutrients are stripped away. Then selected chemical leaveners and stabilizers step in to rebuild structure that real fermentation would normally create. What looks like a simple loaf is in fact a carefully engineered product designed for maximum consistency, shelf stability, and cost efficiency. And this matters for anyone who buys packaged bread, assuming it's a wholesome staple, when the softness comes from formulation rather than freshness, and the longevity is down to improvers rather than natural baking. It becomes harder to align the loaf with its comforting image. Those trying to reduce reliance on ultra-processed foods, limit additives, or choose ingredients closer to scratch cooking may find the reality of supermarket bread more industrial than expected. A sliced loaf isn't just flour and yeast. It's a finely tuned solution to large-scale food production, where the priority is uniformity, not simplicity. And if the idea that everyday bread is engineered to outlast its natural life already makes you reconsider your morning toast, the next product reveals even more. Because its branding leans on all things rustic and traditional, yet the industrial processing behind it is far more complex. than the wholesome image it sells. Number 2. Cathedral City cheese. Cathedral City is often presented as the definition of proper British cheddar. The rustic block, the deep colouring, and the farmhouse styling all imply heritage, quality, and a straightforward dairy process. Many families buy it believing they're getting a clean, traditional cheese, milk, salt, cultures, and thyme. It's served on toast, in sandwiches, on cheese boards, and in lunchboxes, and its reputation for honest simplicity has made it a staple across generations. The branding leans heavily on images of countryside dairies, suggesting a product shaped by hands rather than machines. But modern supermarket cheddar production is far more industrial than the packaging implies. In large-scale facilities, cheese is often processed with anti-caking agents designed to prevent the block from crumbling or sticking, as well as additives that help stabilize moisture and maintain uniform texture from batch to batch. Dairy used in mass manufacturing is also frequently standardized. Fats adjusted, proteins balanced, and curds mechanically refined to ensure the final product fits the exact same profile every time. Even the maturing process can move away from slow, natural aging in favor of environments optimized to save time and achieve predictable results. What seems like traditional cheddar may be the outcome of closely controlled production systems rather than artisanal craft. For shoppers who trust the rustic styling, that gap between image and process matters. People buy Cathedral City believing it's closer to nature than many fridge staples, something they can put confidently in their children's sandwiches or serve at the table. But once you learn how much of its identity is built on the appearance of tradition rather than true, small-scale craft, it becomes harder to see it as a simple dairy product. Those trying to avoid overly standardized or industrially refined foods might take a second look when they realize how many steps go into making a supermarket cheese behave, slice and melt exactly the same way every time. The illusion of heritage can be one of the most effective disguises in the modern food industry. And if that shift in perspective surprises you, stay for the final item, because it's the most beloved British cupboard classic of all. And the number of added ingredients hiding inside its comforting sauce is enough to change the way you look at every single tin. Number 1. Heinz baked beans. Heinz baked beans hold a place in British culture that few products can match. They're part of fry-ups, jacket potatoes, school meals, and quick suppers, often spoken of with genuine affection. The bright blue tin and warm tomato sauce feel comforting and familiar, and many people see them as one of the better tinned options. Simple beans, a bit of sauce, and nothing to worry about. For parents, students, and anyone cooking on a budget, they represent reliability, a meal that feels wholesome, hearty, and close to home. Because they seem so basic, almost everyone assumes they're made the basic way. But the classic beans are more engineered than their humble image suggests. The sauce is not just tomatoes and seasoning, but a carefully constructed blend that includes added sugars, modified ingredients, and formulation techniques designed to stabilize color, flavor, and consistency across enormous production runs. The sweetness many associate with comfort often comes from added sugars that elevate the sauce far beyond what most people would use in homemade cooking. Meanwhile, the overall sodium content and the way the beans are processed contribute to a profile closer to an ultra-standardized food product than the rustic staple people imagine. Even the precise texture of the beans, soft but not mushy, is achieved through industrial cooking and conditioning rather than the slow simmering most home cooks picture. And this matters because Heinz has become almost shorthand for good tinned food. Many people would never question a tin that feels so familiar, so tied to childhood memories and simple dinners. But once you understand how carefully engineered the product is, crafted for long shelf life, flavor control and consistency rather than simplicity, it's difficult to see the tin the same way again. Homemade beans can be quite plain, even variable, whereas the ones poured from a can are the result of tightly managed production, precise formulations, and layers of decisions made in factories, not kitchens. The gap between perception and reality becomes clearer, a beloved icon built as much by industrial technique as by tradition. If discovering that even Britain's favourite tin is more manufactured than many assume has left you wondering what else might be hiding in everyday food, you're not alone. And we're only halfway through this journey, because the deeper we go, the the more you'll see how familiar brands rely on processing, additives and lab-designed shortcuts far more often than their cheerful labels ever reveal. If any of today's items surprised you, I'd love to hear which one did. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's start a conversation about the everyday foods we've overlooked for far too long. Share this video with friends or family who might be shocked by what's really in their shopping baskets. And if you want more exposés that dig below the packaging, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. There are plenty more brands, products and ingredients worth examining, especially the ones that look innocent at first glance.